All right, folks. So I'm trying to resolve a couple of dilemmas today. Basically, trying to get some issues straight out here in the middle of nowhere. And I'd like to kind of get this one straight. This one's been kind of ringing in the back of my head for a while. And I think the main issue that I have with MAGA and Trump, a lot of people talk about Trump derangement syndrome. Well, I like to say if you've got to label somebody as having a personality or a mental defect in order to rebut what they say, I think that's pretty self-evident, evident, obvious evidence of your own issues. Like, okay, suppose I disagreed with somebody, okay? Now, I have three ways of dealing with this person. Okay, first person, ignore everything they say. If I don't agree with them, they say something I don't agree with, I just ignore them. Okay. Second thing I have is the option of trying to come up with a logical rebuttal, which, as humans do, can have any number of logical fallacies involved in the rebuttal. Okay, but the main point is, I at least try to have a logical rebuttal. I don't just, start an ad hominem attack. I don't just dismiss what they say out of hand because I think it's wrong, or I don't think it's ethical, or I don't think it's rational. I just actually try to reason with this person's opinion. Okay, I don't bring racism into it, like because say they're white and I'm black, or I don't bring sexism into it as well. That's what a woman would think, and I'm a man. I don't bring their economic status or their social status into the situation, which is what's commonly the case, where I'd say that you're wrong because you're just a poor street urchin, and that's where the way the poor street urchins think, or you're a pirate, or you're a liberal or a Democrat or a conservative or Republican. These are not rational rebuttals of what somebody says. They are generalizations against which you are claiming that your opinion is valid and superior, and their opinion is invalid and inherently inferior because it's of some class or status, argument. I see this a lot when I see people saying, well, as an electrical engineer, as a mathematician, as a plumber with 14 years of experience, as a data scientist, or as a physicist or a chemist or whatever, you can't make your argument on the merits of your argument, your logic, your facts. You've got to make it on the assumed merit of your status as a person. And I think that that's obviously part of what has caused MAGA to start saying, well, you're a liberal, you're a Democrat, you support illegal aliens, uh, you're just wasting our money, you're happy to waste taxpayers' money in order to accomplish your liberal goals, all this kind of thing. None of those are really, remotely rational arguments. Now, I can understand how you might want to categorize the person making that argument as some kind of, inherently corrupt person who's going to say things that are not true, or at least that are biased towards their position in life. But the problem is in this particular topic that I'm going to talk about right now, you kind of have to do that because nobody really knows anything about souls. Nobody really knows anything about babies, zygotes, fetuses, except for the fact that we have a bunch of medical information about them, and we have a bunch of theological information about them. Still theological, okay? It's not medical science or proven in any kind of scientific manner. It's theological, okay? And again, you get to this issue of dismissing or accepting or believing in, or even worse, being afraid to refute something because of the theological implications. A lot of times this happens when people are literally afraid that they're going to get killed for their opinion, not to mention blacklisted or fired from their job or something like that. When we start talking about honest, true opinions and free speech and all this kind of stuff. It's really ironic for MAGA people to attack people sociologically or in terms of the threat to their income, their job, or their background, their position, to do all the things that they complain about liberal Democrats doing, or woke people doing, or DEI doing, to do the exact same thing in response. But it's okay because they're MAGA people, and MAGA people won the election. We won, you lost, blah, blah, blah. Okay, deal with it. To declare all of the criticism of MAGA itself and Trump himself as TDS or liberal snowflakes whining or something is inherently hypocritical. But I say this, having just said what I said, I still say this. How can you really expect people who aren't reasonable, aren't logical, don't deal with facts, don't really think independent of the group they're in, to have a honest opinion about something where that group or that background or whatever is characteristically biased to a certain opinion? And so let's get to the point here, okay? I think that people who think that abortion is a bad thing, a unethical thing, a venial sin, okay, and therefore it should be banned based upon the fact that souls are innocent and innocent souls deserve the protection of the Constitution just like everybody else does, okay, is nonsense. I really think that. The reason is obvious, because the fetus or the zygote or whatever you call it, the soul, if there is a soul, it is zygote. If a zygote has a soul, if a baby, unborn baby has a soul, then how could it be innocent of what it's doing to the host parent, to the host mother? How is it innocent? Is the birth of an organism inherently separated from what it is doing to that organism to survive? And this is where the fallacy comes from, okay? Yes, it's very possible that zygotes have a soul from conception, but does that mean that the zygote's soul is innocent of what it's doing to exploit what it needs for life from the host parent? Does that mean that the long-term implications of that zygote's existence are not inherently tied to the soul? Okay? Let me ask you a question. Let's think of a hypothetical situation, okay? If a zygote needs a host mother to provide it with fresh nutrients, oxygen, whatever foodstuffs one consumes when one is a zygote, okay, that are in the bloodstream of the parent, a warm womb, full of amniotic fluid and relatively isolated from its surroundings of the mother, okay, to survive. Let's just assume that's true, okay? Why can't we make a similarity between that zygote at the birth of life, the very beginning of life, and a 35-year-old man doing the same thing, living, taking nutrients out of the air and the environment in which he lives in, or a 35-year-old woman? Just the same thing. It could be male, could be woman, okay, or it could be somewhere in between. Sex hasn't become evident yet at that point in the zygote's existence. It won't become evidence for probably another 6 weeks until it displays genitalia, or you do a DNA test to check, whether it's a predominantly XX or XY, okay? Sex chromosomes. So if we can't do that, then we have to admit that the zygote is 100% dependent on the mother, okay? Whatever it does, at that point, it's 100% dependent on the mother, okay? You could take the zygote out of the host mother's body at some point, but it won't be until it's viable outside of the womb, right? Or until we develop the medical technology to transplant zygotes from conception to a womb or another womb. Okay, and like that's what they do in terms of in vitro fertilization. They take an egg and a sperm, they put them in a petri dish, number of different sperm, right, and one egg or 5 eggs and whatever, and they take all those eggs, wait till they're fertilized. They now can tell when they're fertilized because the egg outer layers no longer will allow sperm to pass through the egg and fertilize the egg. But they can tell when these eggs are fertilized. They can tell when, according to MAGA doctrine and church doctrine and God knows whoever else's doctrine, that there's now a life. It's conceived. It's now a life, okay, according to their doctrine, okay? Well, if it's a life, according to its ability to inherit constitutional protections, then it certainly is a life that's able to commit criminal activity. As long as you define criminal activity as what it's doing. If you want to say that that's criminal activity, you can say it's criminal activity. You want to say that a conception is a moment at which the soul is innocent, and therefore from its innocence on through birth, it's incapable of actually committing sin. If you want to say that, why can't we also say that it's committing a crime? Just in living in a host mother. If you had a virus, the virus is invading, infecting, changing the DNA of host cells, that would be a criminal. I think everybody in the world would say that's a crime. If it was a bacteria, it was a spore, it was a fungus, if it was a parasite, I don't think anybody in the world would defend that as non-criminal. But as a baby, as a zygote, we have these large number of people who all say, hey, it's an innocent life. What makes that opinion any more valid than any other opinion? So why do these people think that just because the religion says that that's what happens, why do they think that they should force that opinion on everybody else? I think that alone is a crime. Forcing someone else to have a child to support this innocent life, quote unquote, that's not exactly innocent, is it? I think we all agree on that. Okay, I don't think that there's even the most steadfast, most zealously religious Catholic or conservative Christian or whatever who thinks that forcing somebody else to have a baby is not a criminal offense. That's not saving the soul of the fertilized egg. That's a crime. That is forcing people to carry a fertilized egg in their body. That is a criminal offense. So to me, the bigger problem here that I see with MAGA is this whole idea of rationalizing the means to an end by the end, is what they call justifying the mean by the ends that you're trying to accomplish. I think that that is probably one of the most wide open traps of logic and criminal evil that you could ever have. I could always find some reason to justify doing evil. It's still evil. That doesn't change. The fact that you're a Supreme Court justice or a congressional representative or the President of the United States or a church leader, that doesn't change that from evil. It's still evil. It may be what the voters want, doesn't make the voters free from evil either. And if you really want to talk about it, the big problem that I see is this whole thing is how much evil do you expect a zygote to engage in? Well, obviously, a lot of people think none. They're not capable of evil. Therefore, they're innocent. I think that's just not rational. A zygote is capable of as much evil as a zygote could be capable of. Just as in every stage of life after conception, okay, there's some evil that organism is capable of doing, okay? It may not have consciously created an evil or engaged in evil, but it's still going to be able to engage in whatever evil it's physically and mentally capable of doing. To say that it is capable of engaging in no evil and therefore it's innocent is nonsense.